What can a single day really tell us about the state of our world? Well, we're going to look at January 29th, 2026, because this one day perfectly captures two competing philosophies that are shaping our future. On one side, you have confrontation. On the other, cooperation. Let's break it down.
And boom, it starts right here with his really stark warning. On this one day, the President of the United States lays it all out, a direct threat to Iran. Either agree to a new nuclear deal or you're going to face overwhelming force. I mean, that really sets the stage for a very, very particular approach to foreign policy.
So, check this out. This slide just perfectly illustrates the tension of the day. On one hand, you've got the U.S. threatening military action. And at the exact same time, leaders from the UK and China, they're in Beijing talking about a long-term strategic partnership. I mean, two massive global events happening on the same day with completely opposite game plans. All right, so first, let's really dig into that confrontational stance, because this isn't just a one-off threat, right? It's all part of a bigger strategy, a playbook that's often called peace through strength. And on this day, man, it was in full effect. Okay, so this playbook, it basically has three main parts. First, you've got the really obvious one, the threat of military force. But just as important, you have the stuff that's happening behind the scenes, using economic power as a weapon. And finally, it's about applying that same kind of pressure back home, on domestic institutions, to make sure everybody's on the same page. So let's look at that military pressure, because it wasn't just talk. We're talking about a U.S. naval armada actually moving toward the region. And how does Iran respond? Their Revolutionary Guard Corps deploys hundreds of its own missile-launching vessels. It's a classic, high-stakes game of chicken right there in the Arabian Sea. And listen, the pressure campaign wasn't just about ships and missiles. The economic side of this playbook was absolutely in full swing. You had a Treasury report that kind of hinted, hey, we might slap some new tariffs on our trading partners. Then the administration got super explicit, threatening Mexico over its oil sales to Cuba. And you can actually see the impact this has, right? Sanctions seem to have pushed Venezuela to open up its state-controlled oil industry. It's basically foreign policy being used as an economic weapon. And that pressure campaign, it didn't stop at the border. The White House was pushing the Federal Reserve, which, is supposed to be this independent body, pushing them hard to lower interest rates. But as you can see, the Fed held its ground. It just goes to show you a real willingness to challenge even your own domestic institutions to get what you want. Okay, but while all of that was happening, a completely different game was being played on the other side of the world, one based not on pressure, but on partnership. And that's the key thing to remember here. Confrontation wasn't the only story of the day, not by a long shot. At the very same time, other world leaders were out there actively trying to build alliances, forge partnerships, and cool things down through dialogue. And here's what that actually looked like. You've got the UK and China meeting in Beijing, talking partnership. You see France backing Denmark in this Greenland dispute and framing it as a strategic wake-up call for all of Europe to get on the same page. And, this is a big one, a tentative ceasefire was reached in Syria. Every single one of these is an act of diplomacy, a clear alternative path to the whole might makes right approach. There's actually a word for what we're talking about here. It's called multilateralism. It's this simple but really powerful idea that countries can get more done by working together in groups, coordinating what they do instead of just going it alone. It is the complete opposite of that unilateral approach we were just talking about. And it's really important to point out that even in a world that feels so divided, cooperation isn't totally dead. At the same time all this is going on, the UN passed this historic resolution to fight corruption. And get this, even within the US, a bipartisan Congress agreed on billions of dollars for global HIV and AIDS funding. So on some huge issues, collaboration is still happening. But here's the thing. This intense focus on geopolitics, whether it's the confrontational kind or the cooperative kind, it can sometimes make us miss the bigger picture. Because there are these massive global crises unfolding that honestly couldn't care less about our political games. Just look at this number. Over 3 million. That's how many people have returned to their homes in Sudan, even while a brutal conflict is almost in its third year. This is just a staggering humanitarian crisis happening in the background, while diplomats are meeting and military ships are posturing.
And that's not the only fire we've got to put out. On this same day, scientists dropped some terrifying new data about the Thwaites Doomsday Glacier in Antarctica. It's melting even faster than we thought. An international alert goes out for the deadly Nipah virus in India. And back in the U.S., an executive order gets signed to fight a devastating addiction crisis. These are threats that don't care about borders.
So, you gotta ask, right? As all these world powers are so focused on their strategic competition, who's actually keeping an eye on the planet? Who's focused on the shared crises that are threatening every single one of us? It's the question that just hangs over all the chaos of this one single day. All right, let's tie this all together. What we've really seen today are two profoundly different visions for how the world should operate, both playing out in real time.
So let's just lay it out side by side. On one side, you have the force playbook, unilateral threats, economic pressure, and a really confrontational stance. And on the other side, the diplomacy playbook, multilateral partnerships, strategic dialogue, and a focus on de-escalation and building alliances. Two completely different worldviews, happening on one planet.
And really, that's the bottom line from this one day in 2026. It presents this incredibly stark choice, not just for our leaders, but for all of us. Two totally distinct paths forward for one single shared planet. And the question it leaves us with is, which one are we going to choose? Which path will ultimately define our future?